Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Good evening, good afternoon, maybe even somewhere wherever you're tuning in from. Good morning, and welcome to your common sense home for all of the wandering, suffering, sane majority that are out there. We've got a very special guest to bring with to have a discussion with this evening. There's a lot going on in society, and we get an awful lot of opportunity to discuss the obvious. And for folks that are familiar with some of the other work, the people that we talk to, we're looking for people that can help as well, not just diagnose. And on that note, it's my very special privilege to bring Dr. Ann Gillies to us today, who I'm not going to embarrass myself with trying to give you guys the short and skinny of what her cover letter looks like. And it was way too big to share into the print here. But thank you very much, Dr. Gillies, for taking a little bit of time to come and talk with us about something that's going to be a very compelling discussion for people out there that get a chance to tune in tonight. There's a lot going on in our daily lives, and some of the things that people are having the most trouble dealing with are things that we're not even really able to talk about. And that's where you are kind of a specialist.
Well, I didn't want to be. God has different things in store for us that we aren't always aware of. But anyways, yeah. Well, I'm really happy to be here. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that certainly have happened in my life and that pushed me kind of into psychotherapy and in order to kind of help my kids and then kind of what's going on right now. Certainly lots in the world, right?
There is, and this is going to be a unique opportunity for the community out there. And by all means, guys, Dr. Gillies has agreed that if she sees a question or a comment in the chat there, that she has free reign to jump on and to respond to anything. So if you have something, put it in there. I'm not able to see the chats on all of the platforms that we're on. So if you're new here, subscribe wherever you're seeing this. If you're not, subscribe and share. And let's we'll get on with this. So we'll try and catch what we can on Facebook and Rumble. But give us a little background, Dr. Gillies. So you've spent not just 5 minutes in the field that you represent, and it's a field I think that most of us don't have access to knowledge and understanding within. But one thing that is, I think, a common point across our whole country is we see that there is all kinds of mental health crises going on, and there's a lot of things that are making this happen, and we're hopefully going to be able to shed a little bit of light on some of that today.
So yeah, so for me, I ended up later in life. I was about 38 when I went back to school. I didn't actually finish high school. That's a long story. It's in my book, Damaged by the Predators Among Us. But I went to school and I took counseling and theology together. And I kind of stuck my toe in the water to see if I could even do the work. I wasn't that confident. And my purpose was because I didn't really want a job. I wasn't even thinking that far down the line. I wanted to know what I could do to help my children who had been viciously sexually abused by their father, who was and perhaps still is a pedophile. And I can talk about that later. Anyways, a lot of stuff, a lot of water under the bridge. And so I ended up kind of specializing in, guess what, sexual abuse and counseling for 25 years, primarily adults who had suffered chronic sexual abuse in childhood. All of their lives, rape, kidnap, those kind of things. It sounds pretty gruesome for most people, and it is, except that, it was something that in my heart I just knew I wanted to do, and I wanted to help people. And I know that sounds really strange, but I loved trauma work and I loved the people. So that's kind of where I went, and yeah, so interesting stuff. And since I wrote my first book in 2016, kind of on the it was uh, it was integrating theology and psychology in the treatment of complex trauma. And then in 2017, I published Closing the Floodgates, Setting the Record Straight on Gender and Sexuality. So when that was just at the publishers, Jordan Peterson came on the scene. And I'm watching the television, I'm listening to him, man, and I'm going, oh man, he is so right on. And I, at one point, and I think it was a few months later, I heard him say, where is the woman in Canada that would stand beside me? And I'm going, here I am. How do I contact you? I'm not very good at marketing and networking. So anyways, we still have not connected, but he sings my song. He is just common sense right down the line, and I so appreciate him, and my heart goes out to him for all of the persecution he's been through because of our idealistic and not idealistic, it's this this ideology of our society.
Well, this has been the last 5 years, particularly, I think, has been the most significant change our society here in Canada has ever gone through in such a short period of time, and not for the better. And I think that makes people like Jordan Peterson and yourself, and some of the others that are friends and family on the show here, stand out that much more. And I think to me, this has been an amazing thing just since meeting you, because we had kind of we have a wide, diverse family and community here, and we really leaned on our friend Michelle because we didn't know that there was other folks like you out here that were fighting some of these same problems and sicknesses in our that are raging against us. And I'm not even exaggerating on that, I don't believe. And this particular area of specialty or knowledge and experience that you have in the predators among us, is something that we as a whole, I think, we know they're out there, we see them, but we don't have a clue. We're forbidden to about speaking about any of those things, acknowledging them, pointing them out. And so we have no recourse, or we feel we have no recourse.
Well, and that's really why I wrote the book that I just published in December called Damaged by the Predators Among Us. So it's my story and my children's story, but I also I also added some very specific interviews I did from someone in the music industry and someone in the fashion industry and some other stories, because what I wanted to do was bring this whole area of pedophilia in the home, in the marketplace, to light. And it has been coming to light in one, well, minimally, right? I mean, look at Epstein and all that. It's only come to light this much. So Damaged by the Predators Among Us is our story. And it's not an easy read. And it's very difficult. When I look back and think, oh, how did this ever happen? But I learned a lot about pedophiles after, I'd remarried. I didn't even know. I never knew what happened to my children while I was in that marriage. And I mean, talk about guilt and just carrying a heavy burden, because I knew my former husband had confessed several times to me that he had multiple homosexual affairs. And I had this false idea that I should, just because of the children, forgive him and kind of try and move on with our lives. And how I ever even stayed with him, I don't know. But it was the wrong choice, obviously. I had no idea what he was doing to my children. And so this whole thing of cunning, manipulative, very strategic. These people are not dummies. And there was a lot of planning went into the things he did. And the whole scenario. So I talk about that in this book. And it's sad because no one wants to believe it could happen to them. You know, it's one of those things. It's like living with a murderer. And you know, you think, how could somebody not know that their husband was out killing people? You know, you watch those truths. Well, believe me, no, I'm not saying that I shouldn't have had my eyes open more. I look back, I think, oh, why didn't I know? But what he did and what predators do is they threaten the children. And so he told these were our children, his biological children. He had also sexually abused his siblings. Their stories in there too. And so this isn't something that he just started when we married. It was already ingrained. He had already made choices, right? But he threatened the children and told them he would either kill them or kill me if they ever said a word. They were terrified. He beat them lots. He was very violent. And he was clever about all of that. And the kids would say, oh, we just fell out of the tree. Or they were rowdy, rough and tough boys. So it was almost believable looking back. I'm going, why did I believe them? Well, because they told me that, right? So I chose to believe them. But so whatever you think of me, it doesn't really matter. What I want to say is that there are pedophiles, there are predators among us. Some of them are in our homes, and there's some things down the road. Looking back, I could tell with the kids. I knew there was something going on, but I couldn't figure it out. And this was in the 80s. It wasn't easy to access counseling. It wasn't, and we lived in a small community. Anyways, all of that to say, it's been a ride, let me tell you. And so he's still out and about somewhere. It went to court, and with all kinds of evidence, let me tell you, and he was acquitted. And I was devastated. My son was devastated. And the police had thought it was a slam dunk, and he was acquitted. Looking back, I'm thinking, I wonder what else was going on in that courtroom. You know, now I'm so much more awake to all of these things. So, yeah, so it's been a journey. It's a challenge. We're still seeing the long-term ramifications with our adult children. They still experience some things. So the son, and I'll read you a little portion of what he wrote for my book. So this young man has been 25 years as a drug addict. This destroys their sense of who they are, their identity, their self-worth. It goes so deep. Maybe I'll read that now. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
So hold on, folks. This is not easy reading. It's very much tell it like it is. Two of my sons wrote chapters in this book. I mean, they were just so courageous. So this is my one son, and he's recounting what happened to him, some of what happened to him, which the police told us when it was reported, it was the worst case of sexual abuse they had ever encountered. Like, this was not just, it was awful. And he says this: the sexual and physical abuse I remember started when we lived in Vancouver. That's where I was born, and I lived until I was 2 years old. Now, when he told me that he had been sexually abused before he was 2, I'm like, now I know that that happens to children, but he actually remembered the names of the men. And when he said the names, I'm like, I haven't thought of these people for 35 years. Anyways, he said, yeah, he remembers the names of the men who were friends of my father in Vancouver. These men, invited by my father, had sexually abused me, and I was just a toddler. Dad's brutal abuse escalated when we moved back to Ontario. It was his hometown, so he had lots of connections. And he began to bring his boyfriends into the house when Mom was working. And this is a huge red flag, because this man, the last 5 years of our marriage, didn't work. He was home and looked like the good husband, cooked the meals, cleaned the house, all of those things, but he had another agenda. And I was working 2 jobs at that time. So I was out a lot. So where was I? Yes. When Mom was working and the other kids were at school, there were 3 or 4 guys who regularly visited to have sex with my dad, and then they would rape me. Sometimes it was only one of them. Other times, all of them, one at a time, while the others watched. Dad would make me watch them all have sex and then force me to comply with their wishes. And I'm not going to read the details. That's enough detail. But he ends the chapter with, what kind of father would do this to his son? And that's what I want to say. We have vicious, unconscionable predators among us. And yeah, what kind of father would do that? And we know that incest happens a lot. And yet, in academia, there's a whole movement, and it has been since 1948 with Kinsey, Alfred Kinsey, who really brought a lot of this thinking in. And it's through the Kinsey Institute. They train more sexologists than any other university in the States, at least, if not worldwide. And his research is just scandalous, and yet it's adopted in academia. So pretty sad, because he says some awful things, like children are sexual beings from infancy onward, and that having sex with children is good for them. There's so many things, and this was 1948, so we've been on a trajectory, and I talk about that in Closing the Floodgates. So lots of things. Okay, I'm going to.
There's a lot that I just kind of want to tap back through all of that. So to provide a little bit of understanding here for myself and getting the time of this, I mean, so you've experienced some horrible things through predatory people. And this has gone where you didn't just crawl into a cave and disappear. You went through the steps, got educated, spent a career then, and achieved the academic knowledge about all of the things that your family endured and have survived through. And that gives you such a unique perspective compared to most anybody where we get a chance to speak with them. We see so much happening around us that is developing into almost like, and this is me being kind of bluntly assessing this, literally a manufacturing system to recreate this kind of predators, and it's almost like a factory out there right now for creating these kinds of individuals.
Well, there's so much grooming going on, and in our schools. And thinking about sex trafficking, no one ever heard of sex trafficking, of children and adolescents, particularly, probably before 2010. It was so rare, and now it is just, the internet has a lot to do with that. But predators, I mean, they have a whole wide open arena. And then our children are literally being groomed to accept any kind of sexual touch, anything. They are sexualized. They are being sexualized and have been for the last, many years. It's just, but in the last 2 or 3 years, it's like on steroids. It's on steroids, and it's scary what's happening in our schools. And it's very, very scary for our children, and for therapists as well. Not so much scary, but one of the things that it used to be fairly, let's say easy, but cut and dried. If a young child was doing certain things, and had some was kind of sexualized. So, they just kind of did things that you just knew were kind of a little off. You could probably be pretty sure that there was something going on either at home or
It was an indicator that there was a predator in that child's environment.
that somebody had touched them. Could be another kid, could be, but you could actually differentiate. Now, children are, in the earliest grades are being taught how to masturbate, for goodness sakes. And then California, I was just talking yesterday to a group, and California is putting in closets in their schools where children can go and masturbate privately. Give me a break. Give our heads a shake. What is wrong with us as parents and educators, as politicians? My goodness. Yeah.
Well, and right here in Canada, homework projects for preschoolers to show on pictures where they hide to masturbate from their parents, and if they can't, then why? And there's this our the what I've been dealing with a tsunami of is parents and groups that are dealing with an overwhelm in their communities everywhere of this kind of pressure from the system at every point where the parents aren't uh, completely hovering over the child, and watching every direction that child looks. They're being inundated with this stuff, and it's almost impossible to protect the kids, it seems like, from this kind of thing. And it's so woven into that. A good friend of mine, his grandchild comes home at 9 a short while ago and says, "Granddad, I'm gay." And granddad's kind of taken aback, and he says, whoa, 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 why do you think that? And he says, well, I think girls are icky, so the teacher told me I'm gay, so now I have to date boys.
No, okay. So here we go. A 9-year-old boy. Now, when you were a 9-year-old boy, didn't you think girls were icky? I
They were
know.
the grossest, nastiest, smelliest. Ew.
We have taken what's normal and sexualized everything, and that teacher should be fired. I'm sorry. Well, no, I'm not sorry. I am irate at the teachers that would tell a child in their class, and this has happened in Canada, it's documented, that the 6-year-old child, that she wasn't a girl, she was probably a boy. How dare they? How dare they? Who do these teachers think they are? They're not therapists. They're not, and even other counselors, school counselors, they have no right. They don't have the education to deal with those kind of things. And just because the child is playing with the truck, give me a break. Didn't we spend years in the feminism movement trying to have equality so girls could play with trucks and boys could, whatever. Anyways, now we have, oh, you must be a boy. It's just crazy making for children. And you talked right at the beginning about mental illness on the rise. We've created, and this is what I've been saying for several years, that we've created the greatest mental health crisis we have ever seen, not just in Canada, but the Western world. And we've done it. We have done it. Now, I'm not saying it's only because of the education system, but it's a huge contributor. The other thing, of course, is social media, and all of the stuff that's on it, and children having free access. Come on, parents. Why are you buying your children cell phones? Why are your children having cell phones before they are even able to, really understand how can you protect them? Parents need to start being parents again. Love your kids, set some boundaries. And you know what? If your child is going to scream and yell and take a hissy fit, you can watch them have a fit. Walk away. You're the parent. Hello. And the schools have just eroded any kind of authority of parents. And so parents are afraid. You were talking about curriculum. I've been, I've got I hate to buy these books, but I have bought a few of the books that are out there easily found in school libraries for young children. And I had one of them, and I took it. My 30-year-old son was visiting, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to show you this children's book." It was for 10 to 14-year-olds or something. I said, "Tell me what you think about it." He opened the first page and said, "This is nothing but porn, Mom." And I went, bingo, bingo. He's got more sense than these teachers and these other people. And so hear me if you're a teacher, because I sound really critical. And I know there are good teachers out there. I know you're caught in this evil system, and I get it. But somehow, somebody has to organize teachers to come together to start saying, no more, no more, no more. These children are being abused.
And that was one of the reasons why I was so eager to speak with you, is because this is something that you're actively addressing. And I've been working with these underground communities that are trying to deal with some of this stuff. And the doctrine has been set, the librarian's assistant, all the way up through the municipal branches. They follow the marching orders. And so we've been literally documenting this process of the system supporting this. To me, and for me, I agree. This is straight up porn. And when this was first brought to me 9 months ago, I had at the first response to this, I had to get police involved because I was afraid of what these parents were sending me. That it was gonna end me up in jail because I was getting this stuff, and it was in kids' books. And these families are discovering it in the libraries, and they speak up to object, and then they are demonized, persecuted, canceled, or ignored, or dismissed, all the way up the food chain. And for a lot of the community here, also listens to one of my associates, Shadow Davis, who does a night show. He's got one of the parents that's been dealing with this, because this is everywhere. And what scares me, if I don't want to ramble, and I want to get more of your thoughts on this, but I wanted to address this, to kind of bridge this, is we've talked a lot in the past on this show about trauma, and we've addressed it from recognizing the signs of trauma and understanding that there are different triggers of trauma. And what scares me about this particular discussion is these events that children are having with exposures to this kinds of events, books, people, personalities, narrative discussion, all of this kind of stuff is a trauma manufacturing system. These kids do not walk away from these events unscathed, not even just once, to me. And that's where my fear comes.
Well, they can't walk away unscathed because, the brain, children are like sponges, right? Young children are like sponges. We send them to school so they can learn all about the world, all about the good things. We want them to learn mathematics and history. Well, we don't want them to learn history anymore. But anyways, we used to send them to school so they could learn, because we knew that their brains were very malleable and they would learn all kinds of things. Well, guess what? They're learning all kinds of things, and it's absolutely evil. And the concept, when you're talking about this, I'm going to read a quote. I actually was looking at some stuff today and I thought, oh, I'm going to write some of this down because it might be interesting for you. So I mentioned Kinsey from 1948, Dr. Kinsey. And so I talk a lot about him in the first part of Closing the Floodgates because I'm building the timeline of what's been happening there, sexualizing our children. And his associate, one of his chief associates, was Wardell Pomeroy. And this is what he said. He became an academic. Pomeroy was at University of Essex for decades. He said this: incest between adults and children and younger children can prove to be a satisfying and enriching experience. Yeah, it gets worse. These are academics. This is why academia is corrupt. It's been corrupting the university students who go out and become teachers. They have all of this stuff, and Kinsey stuff is taught all right through because that's where you get this continuum. Kinsey's idea, his theory, unproven theory, by the way, was that we're all born bisexual, and that's where we get this continuum. We're teaching kindergarten kids. Anyways, anyways, he did this too. Incestuous relationships. So think about my son. This is what he said. They can and do work well. We find many beautiful and mutually satisfying relationships between fathers and daughters. They may be transient or ongoing. They have no harmful effects. Well, I just want to shout and kind of go, oh, what person in their right mind would ever say that? Because now I better be careful. He's dead now, but anyways, because I just said maybe he's not in his right mind. But you have to have some kind of twisted thinking to believe there is no harmful effect of incest. And as a therapist, and any trauma therapist knows darn well some of the effects of parents raping their children or pedophiles raping children. The effects are lifelong. I mean, you can do a lot of counseling and they can get a lot of help, and that's a good thing. But sometimes there can still be a trigger that just sets things off for them and breaks their heart all over again. So that line just makes me mad. I think that was 1970s, maybe early 80s. He said that. So we've been on this bandwagon for a long time, and now we're finally, parents are just starting to wake up. Well, let me tell you why we have the problems in the school, because we have a new religion in Canada. Did you know that? We have a new religion.
The alphabet soup religion.
We have, well, if you don't bow down and worship, and I'm going to just put this out there, at the whole altar of LGBT,
yes,
then you will be sent. You will be outcast. Name calling. I don't care about name calling, but you're a criminal. If you would,
I have been removed from more platforms for addressing or attempting to address that discussion than anything else, and not in a violent way. I'm not asking for for violence or trying to describe any of those things. My point and purpose is always in like trying to shake people awake at the collateral damage that is the kids, and it's going to cost a lot more for them to expend their lives dealing with damages that were never never should have happened in the first place. And there's a serious epidemic of these overlooked trauma-inducing events, and now our society is utterly polarized by so much more that is in itself trauma manufacturing, that nobody's unscathed in our society, and these systems are just continually getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and the damages are creating complex damages in the kids, and there's such a glut. There's people, they say there's no help. You mentioned trauma therapist, which is what you specialize in, and Michelle, I've had her on. Every time she comes on, she's so overwhelmed for the next few days by people that say they can't find help. They can't find help. They're looking for this, that, and the other thing. That it's leading us to exactly why I believe the Canadian government is trying to expand their MAID program, because they know that what they're doing is wrong, and it is leading people to a place of desperation in our society with what they're doing, and all things combined, people are looking for ways out, and this is just such a decay of our society. And if we're going to save our nation, our country, everything, humanity, we have to start with the kids.
Well, I want to clarify one thing, and so I want to go back to what I said about LGBT becoming the new religion in Canada, and I would clarify that by saying activists, LGBT
Yes.
activists. So how do I differentiate the common homosexual, lesbian?
I've had lifelong friends that are gay, but they don't agree with what's going on either.
Oh, yeah, gays against grooming. Like
Right?
they are seeing what's happening. They hate it because it reflects on their community as well. And I'm not talking about only homosexual pedophiles or predators. And they don't want to hear that, right? This is a big no-no talking about this. But let's face it, there are heterosexual and homosexual pedophiles. That's it. That's the truth. And when you talk about boys and sex trafficking, LGBT young adults, boys, are right at the top with sex trafficking. They are in the most vulnerable position next to foster care kids and, of course, street kids. But so I have a real heart for these kids. But at the same time, we have to identify what the activists out there are doing and what they're perpetrating in our schools, and who in their right mind would allow a drag queen to come to their library. Give me a break. Do you know what drag queens have done? They entertain in adult bars. They dance, they show things that no child needs to see. Not only that, it's a parody of the feminine body.
It's an insult. It should be an insult to every feminist out there. Absolutely. That these men are portraying to the world that this is what should be normalized as a woman and accepted as a woman. And me as a man, if I should decline an invitation from one of these people, I should be deemed a criminal and perhaps be investigated and thrown in jail for committing a hate crime because I was homophobic in saying no to the this is where we're there.
We are there, and it is a sad state of affairs. We have to turn this around. I mean, when you think of how long this has been building behind our backs, and now in the last 10 years, right in our face, and we just closed our eyes to it, closed our mind to it until the last couple of years. And thankfully, you have parents talking to you. You have a very brave therapist that's talking. Hallelujah. But, the associations, the professional associations, the College of Psychiatrists, College of Psychotherapists and Psychologists, the same thing. This huge suppression of truth, right? Because academia says we need to go this way. And we need to teach this. And you don't have a right to speak out against it, or else you lose your job. Everything is blackmail. So that to me says, okay, what's controlling this? And there's a deeper spiritual thing happening too, but we're not going to get into that tonight. But I think what we need to understand spiritually, there is a new religion, and it's created by activists to destroy life, to in all different kinds of ways. So it's very scary out there.
And that's a really amazing point to make in all of this, because you if you look at the patterns, behaviors, belief system behind religions, this is what they have organized behind, and their religion is this uh, completely inhuman aspiration of what inclusive and acceptive is. And if you don't fit that, and if you are not politically reliable, if you're not willing to throw yourself on a sword to signal your political reliability to that religion, then you must be exterminated, canceled, removed. And it's a cultural genocide to me that they are waging under this false religion that I call, and I won't dignify them, I won't acknowledge them. Their phonetic alphabet that they want to use, whatever they want to identify themselves. To me, it's the alphabet soup. And what I understand is, it doesn't matter what I individually believe. I have to understand that collectively they believe in dominating 100% of us. So if you're my neighbor, you don't have to necessarily believe what I believe, but if you are not politically reliable to their beliefs, they're going to come for you too.
Well, and when the purpose of life is contentment in personal sexual expression, personal freedom, personal sexual freedom, that's where you find your purpose in life, then there's no limits. There's no limits, and that's, one of the gay slogans from way back in the 70s, maybe, was that too much is never enough. And I'm telling you, we have entered the too much is never enough. And those are activist slogans. Okay. That's not your just kind of everyday LGB or T.
Alternative lifestyle liver.
What you want as an adult.
That's straight up Marxism.
When you start saying too much is never enough, then you have to make way, and you have to make way for inclusivity within the culture, for pedophilia, for drag queens. Like, some of those are heterosexual, but there's a lot of scary stuff out there. And whatever they are, guess what? It is an affront to women and to womanhood and for men. Like, yeah. Anyways,
that whole toxic masculinity campaign that they've waged for a long time is why men, I believe, are not standing up now, because wait a minute, you've been calling us and beating us down and we're toxic. Now you want us to save us? But wait a minute, if we do that, if we stand up and say anything, then you're going to call us toxic again. And they've created this again, another traumatic trigger and response against literally the entire 50% of the demographic out there, or what their goal is.
Well, and I do believe it's easier for women to talk about this. Not easy, but and not that there won't be backlash, but men certainly. It's like they have been so nullified and have no voice in culture. And I'm thinking, there are some wonderful men out there. I'm married to one, a wonderful husband God gave me. And I thank God every day for this man, because, it's his love and concern and compassion that really helped me deal with all of the stuff of the past myself. And, there's some good men out there, and those good men are kind of underground. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to ruffle feathers, because they just get so brutalized. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And that's what goes back to what actually drives Jordan Peterson's support. Is he's a beacon and an island of support, in not just reality, but it's okay in his presence to be a man. That's not an excuse to be, uncivilized or savage in any way, shape, or form. But it's you can breathe and go, okay, I'm a man. When you're
Yeah.
listening to his stuff.
And I
And
can be a man and I can act like a man and I can be rough and tough. And my boys were rough and tough. And I'm so glad that they grew into wonderful men. And, that doesn't mean they didn't have a lot of issues to go through. They did, to work through. But, there's a difference because inside there was a masculinity that came through, and it's very much they are lovers of Jordan Peterson too. He released them, like you said, to
yes,
be okay with who they are, because women as well had so put them down. I taught my boys to can you imagine this? They should open doors for a woman, and my eldest son, I remember he was in his 20s and he said, Mom, I want to tell you that doesn't work anymore. They'll just
no,
slam.
it's liable
They'll
to
just
get you yelled at now.
Yeah. I said, keep doing it because there will be some woman sometime that appreciates that. And, I don't have to be less of a woman because I want to be treated that way. I mean, I was a tomboy growing up, and there's an issue. I would have been labeled when I was growing up. I would have, if I lived in this time, I would have ended up being, trailered into the whole trans stuff. I know it because I was vulnerable myself because of my own
They
early.
they would have they would have preyed on what they assumed, and tried to lure or bait or coerce or
Manipulate.
influence and
Yeah.
manipulate and all of those things. And that's exactly what it seems like every kid is up against in every aspect. Everywhere their gaze or attention turns, there is something there that is driving that form of manipulation. uh to me, but this is, I'm hypersensitive and hyper aware to all of these things. And I feel very grateful that you're here and we've found you, and I'm and to that are you're brave enough to speak to some of these things in a serious, legitimate way. Is such a blessing to the community that I'm grateful for the chance to bring you and introduce you. We're kind of getting down here in the last tail end of this, with the last 10 minutes. So the stuff that you want to make sure that the community hears out here, I'm hoping that you'll be able to come back and join us again. No limit, anytime, and we can carry on more of this. So I know we got into some stuff just in a couple of minutes before the show that was like, oh, whoa, wait another day, and there's more to come on all of this. So I'm looking forward to that. But the last 10 minutes here, uh what do you want people to know? Some people have asked about your website, and I'll bring that up in a moment. But uh, you've kind of made a change in over the last a few years, in from going to being a practicing, to being more of an author and a speaker, I guess now.
Yep, and I'm very sorry. I've got a little dog in the background. He's not even in my office, and I hope it's not distracting. But anyways, yeah. Well, I kind of, yeah, I really felt I needed to write these books that I've written that have been published, but the first two, and then I ended up doing some advocacy, and over the last 2 or 3 years, and my desire is to protect children, really, to protect the children. And so, I mean, I've studied a lot, I've learned a lot, certainly learned a lot about gender ideology, and do a lot of speaking on that. Um, and, let's go back and just finish up about pedophilia. In 2014, the New York Times ran an article, and they declared, of course, New York Times, they can do this, right? They declared that pedophilia is not a disorder, it's a choice. Well, the therapists, academics that are really going down that way would agree totally with him. And since 2014, it's become more and more ingrained in academia, this whole idea that pedophilia is not a choice. So they have this new thing going. New old pedophiles are born that way. And by the way, don't call them pedophiles, call them MAPs, minor attracted persons, right? So, but, you know, a MAP is pedophile, right? If they act on it. Now, let's say someone has a thought that goes through their mind. Well, let me talk about that in a minute. Sex with a minor, it's not sex with a minor. This is all the word stuff, the language. Sex with a minor is rape. Hello, call it what it is. An underage woman is a child.
Oh, you've hit on such a key point. They have word saladed us away from being able to accurately describe the problems. And I am a big proponent of keeping it simple. They are predators, they are pedophiles, they are enablers, they are groomers, and they are all criminals.
Well, and the reality is that the DSM in 2014, so that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, Psychological Bible, when it was republished in 2013, I guess it was, there was a real move to take pedophilia right out of there and declare it as an orientation. That's what happened to homosexuality. Now, do I think homosexuality is a mental illness? Not particularly. I think it's, I can go into all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of trauma-based stuff. But to declare that pedophilia as an orientation would then legalize it. We are on the biggest slippery slope. So that was in 2014. The next DSM that comes out, if we don't change this tsunami, if we don't stop it, we are just so picking up pieces for the rest of these children's lives. You know, decades. They'll be destroyed for decades. So, you know, we all have a choice. This is what I want to say about this whole MAPS thing. We all have a choice of our thoughts. It's not, when they say pedophilia isn't a choice, every behavior in life is a choice. Exactly. Your thoughts to your emotions, sometimes it's so close you can't tell, and then your behavior. The minute you act on those thoughts and emotions, it becomes a behavior. Then, if that behavior gets ingrained, right? And so let me tell you, everything's a choice.
100%.
We might not think it is in the moment. That first drink is a choice. There's all kinds of choices in life, but let's take responsibility.
That's really a great point. Thank you for that. You know, there was a time in history where using an expletive was a choice that would get your separated your head from your body, and we've come to a point where that was become acceptable. Now everybody swears, and this is exactly the process that they are trying to duplicate through pedophilia is through their word salading. They're normalizing it and making it, they want it to be as common and as socially acceptable in the social contract as somebody swearing. And I am not down with that in any way, shape, or form. So, amazing stuff. I want to give folks pull up your website here and give folks a chance to give you a chance to talk about this and where they can find you and some of the stuff you're passionate about and working on, and before we let you go.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can check out my website. There's some resources there. As I say, there are 3 books that I have published, but I also it just feels like there's just this download happening. And so I wrote 2 more books that are at the publishers now. One's a children's book. It's at the editing stage, and it's about 2 young girls who become friends before school and go through elementary school together. And through some traumatic events, the one girl begins to delve into the whole trans universe. And so that's there. So that's coming. Another book at the publishers is called Implosion, and it's talking about the cultural things that are happening in our culture that are just bringing everything kind of to, you know, the pendulum can only go so far. It's about to it's about to drop, I think. So that's what that book's about. And, just keep educating the public. That's my desire, to really help parents and people know what's going on out there.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time this evening to join us and give our community a chance to meet with you and learn from what you have been working at for a very long time. And I encourage everybody out there to go and make Dr. Gillies' page a resource for you, because I think we are just beginning to enter into a place where by coming together effectively with articulate information, the correct vernacular, the right words, and we can develop effective communities and defiance of this and a correction, which I think is sorely needed.
That's right. I hope so.
Well, I hope you'll come back and join us again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne.
All right, my pleasure. It's been an honor and a gift. Appreciate you very much, and we will have you back as soon as we can figure out how to put something else together that's not going to be like taking a drink from a fire hose for the folks out there. So
Yes,
you have
I
a great
apologize.
evening. All right. Wow, amazing individual, inspiration, so much to learn, so much to dive into. Already, this is just the beginning of a relationship, I think, with our community and Dr. Gillies. She is a resource, a massive resource of information, knowledge, and experience and expertise that we'll be looking at to bring as much of it as we can to the community, because we do have a lot of work cut out for us moving forward. So thank you for your time, everybody, for joining us. If you're not enrolled on lgm.news yet, get over there. We're working frantically on getting chat working in this show, so you'll be able to chat over there with all of your favorite streamers right there on the platform and get us further and further away from the censorship. So that's get over there, lgm.news. And Shadow has got another friend that am very passionate about helping in this very similar battle against the libraries, and she's going to share her path through navigating the bureaucracy of a lot of what we discussed about here today. So it'll be interesting coincidence that we had both of these different shows happen on the same day, but I think it's kind of it's going to be a unique opportunity for people to have an understanding going into that show if you caught this one today. And if you're not subscribed on Wimkin, make sure you get your account set up on there. We're just starting to figure out the Realster and the Truth Leaks. We'll be meeting with Jason again very, very soon to try and figure out how we can help you guys get more of access and use out of those things and get away from the TikTok and the corruption that's out there. So I love you guys all. Stay strong, stay Canadian, help independent media, support the people doing the work, getting the job done, support the people that are standing up and being brave and sticking their necks out for you, the Dr. Petersons, the Shadow Davises, the Dr. Ann Gillies, and yours truly, us here too. So I love you all. Stay Canadian, stay strong. We'll see you next time. Got some interesting stuff coming this week. Lots in the pipe. Bookmark everything. Bye for now.